Have you ever felt a part of you wake up after years of being asleep? A part you thought was gone forever, only to have it sparked by the one person, in the one situation, where it could cause the most wreckage. What if that spark didn't just flicker, but threatened to burn your entire world down? This isn't a story about vanity or victimhood. It's about the quiet erosion of a life, the sudden quake of a forbidden feeling, and the long, hard walk back to solid ground. If you understand the cost of a single fateful choice, stay with me. Let me paint you a picture of my life before the fracture. It was a still life. A beautiful, orderly, quiet still life. I was 45. A partner, a parent, a person who had built her existence on a foundation of predictability. My days were a well-rehearsed script. Meetings, school runs, grocery lists, conversations with my husband, Daniel, that were more about logistics than love. We were like two satellites in a familiar orbit, close enough to monitor, but fundamentally distant, drawn more by habit than gravity. I told myself this was maturity, that the slow fading of passion was the natural tax you paid for a stable, secure life. I had convinced myself I wasn't just fine. I was content. But there's a vast, echoing canyon between contentment and fulfillment. And I had become an expert at ignoring the echo. The catalyst for the quake arrived in the form of a favor. His name was Leo. He was the son of my oldest friend, a brilliant, somewhat lost young man who had just finished university and needed a temporary landing pad. Saying yes felt automatic. It was the kind of thing you do. He wasn't family, but he was close to it. I'd known him since he was a boy, a gangly kid with skinned knees. That history, that assumed innocence, was my first and most crucial miscalculation. Because the Leo who walked into my home was not a boy. He was 23, with a quiet, self-assured presence that filled a room. He had an artist's hands and a way of looking at you that felt less like a glance and more like an assessment. I felt it immediately. A jarring, electric sense of being seen after years of feeling politely observed. It was disorienting, and I dismissed it as a fluke. A blip in my otherwise steady emotional frequency. The first real crack appeared on a perfectly ordinary Thursday. I was stranded on the living room sofa, a prisoner of my own tension. A brutal work project had knotted my shoulders into stones. I was lost in a haze of spreadsheets and strain when Leo found me. He leaned in the doorway, a glass of water in hand. "Rough day?" he asked. His voice had a low, calm timbre. I tried to wave it off, the standard, "I'm fine," already on my lips, but he didn't accept it. "I took a course in sports therapy once," he mentioned so casually, "helped pay my way. I'm told I have a knack." I laughed, a nervous sound. The offer hung in the air between us, a tiny, glowing ember. The line was there, so small, so simple to ignore. But the ache in my body was real. And the curiosity was a siren song. I told myself it was just a massage, a practical solution. I said yes. I remember the texture of the couch fabric against my cheek. The sound of my own heartbeat in my ears, loud enough to drown out the sensible voice in my head. His hands were warm, confident. They didn't just press on the knots. They seemed to understand their architecture. I let out a breath. I felt like I'd been holding for a decade. "You're better than I expected," I murmured, the words half swallowed by the pillow. "I pay attention," he replied. His voice was closer now. And then his touch changed. It slowed. The therapeutic pressure blurred into something else. A tracing of my spine. A thumb that lingered in the small of my back. It was a question, not a statement. My breath caught. "Is this okay?" he asked. The air in the room had transformed. It was thick, charged. I had a choice in that suspended second. To reclaim the narrative, to reassert the boundary. Instead, I nodded. A tiny, betraying movement. My silence was my answer. It was the moment I became complicit. When he finally left the room with a parting look that felt like a shared secret, I was unmade. I sat in the gathering darkness, my skin humming where he touched it. The guilt arrived first, cold and sharp. But it was followed by something more terrifying. A resurgence, a flood of sensation, and awareness I had mourned as dead. I was furious at him, at myself, but mostly, I was achingly, shamefully alive. That night, sleep was impossible. The memory of his hands was a loop my mind couldn't escape. I had opened a door, just a crack, and seen a version of myself I'd forgotten. Closing it felt like a death. The following days were a silent, agonizing dance. Leo moved through the house with an infuriating, unshakable calm. He didn't pursue. He didn't press. He simply existed, a constant, living reminder of the line we'd blurred. I became a study in avoidance, burying myself in work, yet hyper-aware of his every movement, the sound of his footsteps, the shadow he cast in the hallway. I'd catch him in the garden, shirt off, sweating in the sun, and I'd feel a twist of anger. How dare he be so at ease while my world was tilting? The tension wasn't in grand gestures. It was in the loaded silence over breakfast, the way our hands would almost brush reaching for the same coffee mug. The casual good morning that felt like a cipher for everything unsaid. The dam broke in my home office. He came in under a thin pretext, closing the door softly behind him. The space, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a cage. "You never let me finish," he said, his voice a low vibration. I tried to summon my authority, my adulthood. "That's not going to happen again." He took a step closer. The air evaporated. Why not? The simplicity of the question disarmed me. "It's wrong," I whispered, the words sounding weak, even to me. "Does it feel wrong?" he asked. And then his fingers were on my wrist, a point of searing contact. My mind was a chorus of alarms. But my body was a traitor, leaning into that touch. When he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was acclaiming, and I answered it. For one catastrophic minute, there was no guilt, no future, no past. There was only the dizzying, devastating sensation of being wanted with a ferocity that had been absent from my life for years. After that, we entered a shadow world. We became architects of stolen moments. A kiss in the kitchen after midnight, hidden by darkness. A lingering touch on the back porch, masked by the noise of the crickets. My life bifurcated. The sunlit world of my family, my career, my responsibilities, and this other, secret dimension that pulled with a dangerous, addictive energy. Leo's words were my poison and my balm. "You don't have to pretend with me." And I didn't. With him, I could be the woman who was hungry, who was reckless, who was desired. The guilt was a constant undertow, but I learned to swim in it, to let it carry me to the next secret shore. I started to resent Daniel's normalcy, his obliviousness. His steady, quiet love felt like a cage compared to Leo's electric intensity. I was losing myself. And the terrible part was I enjoyed the freefall. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was domestic. It was a shattered wine glass. Daniel was away. The house was ours. And the tension had reached a fever pitch. One minute we were exchanging charged words on the sofa. The next, the glass was on the floor, a constellation of broken crystal at our feet, and we were wrapped in each other. It was the most honest, most destructive moment of all. And in the breathless quiet that followed, lying there in the wreckage of my own making, I saw it clearly. This wasn't a love story. It was a collision. A beautiful, terrible collision between my deepest loneliness and his youthful, transient fire. I was using him to set my old life ablaze, and he was using me as a rite of passage. The reciprocity of our damage didn't make it noble. It made it tragic. The next morning, in the cold, sobering light, I made a choice. Not from a place of sudden moral clarity, but from a place of exhausted self-preservation. I found Leo. He looked at me, expecting another round of our painful, addictive dance. I said, "This ends now." He challenged me, of course. "Do you mean it?" And for the first time, I held his gaze without flinching. "I have to," I said, "not because I don't want it, but because what I want from this, you can't give. And I can't take it without destroying myself." It wasn't about him being wrong for me. It was about me being wrong for myself in that scenario. I asked him to leave, and he did. The finality of it was a physical pain. What followed wasn't a neat Hollywood ending. It was a slow, Grueling reconstruction. The silence after he left was deafening. The ghost of his presence haunted every room. The guilt towards Daniel was crippling. I had to make a second, even harder choice, to confess and potentially destroy my family to assuage my guilt, or to bear the weight of my secret alone and commit, truly commit, to repairing my marriage from a place of horrific, hard-won honesty with myself. I chose the latter. I began the painful work of looking at my life. Not Leo's role in it, but my role in my own emptiness. I started therapy. I had the terrifying, necessary conversations with Daniel. Not about an affair, but about our distance, our silence, our shared complacency. We began, brick by painful brick, to rebuild something real. It wasn't the easy passion I had with Leo. It was a conscious, daily choice. And somehow, that made it stronger. So, what did I learn in the wreckage? I learned that temptation isn't a monster that grabs you. It's a whisper that finds the cracks in your foundation. I learned that feeling alive is not a valid excuse for causing devastation. Most importantly, I learned that running towards something is always better than running away from something. I was running from my quiet despair, and I ran straight into a different kind of hell. Now, I am trying to run toward a version of myself that finds her vitality in creation, in connection, in the hard, beautiful work of a real life, not in the fantasy of an escape. If you see yourself in any part of my story, if you're in that quiet place feeling the first dangerous flicker of a what if, or if you're in the painful midst of your own secret, hear this. You have more agency than you feel. The story doesn't have to follow the same path. The most profound act of rebellion isn't giving in to a forbidden feeling. Sometimes, it's looking directly at that feeling, acknowledging its power, and then choosing to turn away. To walk the harder road back to your own integrity. The ache of what might have been is a phantom pain. It fades. The scars from the explosion you choose to cause? Those last. Choose the rebuild. It's slower. It's less dramatic. But the foundation you pour yourself will be yours, and it will be real. This was a deeply personal story to share. If it resonated with you or made you think, let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you're on your own road back from a difficult choice, know that you're not alone. If this channel is a space for honest reflections on human complexity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Remember, our mistakes don't define us. Our choices in the aftermath do. Thank you for listening. Be kind to yourselves. I'll see you next time.